When the girl was within a meter of Luff, he activated another ability of the time rune. That was the ability to stop time. No matter how powerful you are, if you can't even move, what else can you do? You can only wait for death. The more confident people are in their speed, the easier it is for them to fall. Although the ability to stop time could only last for 1 minute. It was enough. 1 minute was not much, but it could completely decide a person's life and death. This guy's luck is actually comparable to Kamiya. Could he be a princess or a noble? Under the effect of the fate runes, Luff saw the girl who had come to assassinate him. There was purple mist above her head. The purple mist represented extreme good luck. This was a person who was favored by the goddess of fate. Luff felt a little strange. She was a woman favored by luck, but now she had fallen into his hands. He could kill her at any time. How could this be favored by luck? Could it be that there was something else going on? He looked at the girl in front of him in bewilderment and doubt and casually pulled off her veil. It was a face comparable to Kamiya's, but with a hint of childishness. It had not fully matured yet. It was hard to imagine how shockingly beautiful this girl would be once she grew up. Even Kamiya could not help but be a little inferior. But on this perfect face, a pair of cold star-like eyes could not conceal the killing intent. In her hand was a dagger that emitted a cold and gloomy light. The face of an angel, the heart of a devil. Luff sighed and pinched her cheek. You're really pretty. Unfortunately, you're here to kill me. Sorry. Then you can only die. In Luff's eyes, there were no men and women, only people and enemies. As long as they were his enemies, regardless of whether they were men or women, he would eliminate these enemies. Although he liked beautiful women and wished to have deep communication with them from time to time, he would not neglect his own life because of women. Women could come at any time, however, he only had one life. He still had his life. He could play with any woman. According to Rexton, there were also women from other dimensions who had cat ears on their heads, tails on their backs, and bodies that were so good that they could explode. If he lost his life, he would lose everything. Hence, Luff would not show mercy. However, he decided he would leave such a beautiful woman's corpse intact. This was one of the benefits of being beautiful. Even if she died, she would die with more dignity than the others. Just as he was about to make his move, two voices sounded from afar. Miss, young master, don't. That's my mistress. B** starred. Stop. Luff was stunned. He was familiar with both voices. One of them was Brittany, the young receptionist at the Dawn Inn. Although her name was nothing special and her looks were ordinary, Luff had a good impression of this girl. It was because she had unintentionally helped him that he had been able to perfectly assassinate Berg. When he pretended to be Kelt and went to the Dawn Inn to deliver the invitation, she had always insisted on his instructions. Later, when the officers and soldiers came to search for him, Brittany had also helped him block them. Before he left, she had even chatted with him for a while. It seemed that her mistress was about to come out of seclusion. From the looks of it, this beautiful woman in front of him was Brittany's mistress. Since she was Brittany's mistress, it was impossible for her to have been sent by the queen to assassinate him. This should not be a problem. As for the other voice, Luff had stopped with it for the entire night. How could he not be familiar with it? This was Kamiya's voice. Luff didn't want to get involved with this cold and heartless woman, so after killing Berg, he had left Berg's prince's residence the next day. He was in a hurry to leave the Simon Empire. First, he wanted to go to the Shijiao Empire and see if he could get into rune school. Secondly, he wanted to stay far away from Kamiya. He had never expected this. He had only been gone for a few days, yet he had met her again. And it was with Brittany and the others. How careless. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have stayed here for another day. He would rather have spent more time and experience training Rexton and the others in different places than stay here for another day. After all, who knew how mad this woman would be when meeting her again? Wait a minute. Luff suddenly reacted. Did she just call me a B** starred? What did she mean? This B** starred didn't sound very normal. It sounded like what couples call each other when they lose their temper. Could it be that she recognizes me? That's not right. Luff remembered that he had used illusion runes at that time. Not only did he set up an illusion, but he had also changed his appearance. Even the Grand Tutor of the Simon Empire could not see through my illusion rune, let alone Kamiya. Unless her rune reached the level of a purple rune, it's impossible for her to see through me. Then what did she mean by calling me a B asterisk starred? Stop fooling around. If she did not recognize me, could it be that she was too worried about the girl in front of me and blurted out in a moment of panic? Kamiya was not such a person. Such a woman's heart was incomparably cold. She maintained her composure at all times. How could such a mistake occur? Even when she was poisoned by the spring poison in the prince's residence, she had tried her best to maintain her rationality. Even when she was having sex with me, she had to take the initiative and turn around to press me under her body. She would never lower her head and lose her rationality. All sorts of thoughts surfaced in Luff's mind. It seemed like he would have to test whether Kamiya had recognized him or not. If she could recognize him without the purple rune, then this matter would be worth paying attention to. Luff had always been very confident in his illusion rune. After all, it was a purple rune transformed by the system. It was impossible for others to see through it, but it was right for him to investigate the matter thoroughly. He did not know that the uniqueness of Kamiya's love rune could cause Kamiya and her loved ones to have a kind of connection. Under this connection, she could completely see through Luff's disguise. Therefore, she knew what Luff looked like. To be precise, from the moment Kamiya and Luff had sex, Kamiya knew Luff's real appearance. However, Kamiya had not mentioned this at the time. After all, with Kamiya's extraordinary intelligence, it was easy to figure out the reason. Luff had been there to assassinate Prince Berg. Once he was discovered, he would face the risk of being hunted down. Of course, he could not reveal his real appearance. When Kamiya saw Luff's true appearance, her heart completely melted. His incomparably handsome appearance and sculpted body made him seem like a god that had descended to the mortal world. Even though Kamiya was the #1 beauty of the Simon Empire and had absolute confidence in her beauty and talent, the moment she saw Luff's appearance, she could not help but be dazed and even felt a trace of shame. She had never seen such a perfect person. That's right, Luff was simply a perfect person. Regardless of gender, from any point of view, no matter if it was his appearance, figure, or temperament, there were no flaws. Especially since Luff's strength was extremely powerful, Kamiya could tell that he was about the same age as her. However, he possessed unimaginable power in runes. He had been able to kill Berg in the tightly guarded prince's residence and even hide from the Grand Tutor's detection. This was also the reason why he was able to touch Kamiya. He watched as Brittany and Kamiya rushed over from afar. Luff did not look at Kamiya. Instead, he looked at Brittany and said with a smile, "So it's you. I thought you had come to kill us. Fortunately, I heard your voice just now. Otherwise, your young mistress would have lost her life." Luff rubbed his nose, feeling a little embarrassed. If he had accidentally killed Brittany's mistress, he really did not know how he would have explained it to her. When she heard Luff's voice, Brittany confirmed that it was the young master that she had been missing. But before she could speak, her mistress rushed out. Thus, she could only shout. She was afraid that her mistress would accidentally injure young Master Knight. She knew too well how powerful her young mistress was. Although Elizabeth was only a 3-star rune master, she possessed green speed runes. Green speed runes were extremely rare, but high-grade runes were still second to purple runes. With speed runes, one would be able to control terrifying speed. If one viewed Elizabeth as a simple 3-star rune master, they would definitely die a miserable death. When they died, they wouldn't even know how it had happened, because Elizabeth's speed was simply too fast. It was so fast that an ordinary person's eyes wouldn't be able to react in time. Elizabeth was even able to rely on her extreme speed to kill an ordinary 5-star rune master in a surprise attack. By the time the other party reacted, they would only be able to see their own fallen body. However, the powerful Elizabeth was now like a statue, standing there motionlessly. She had almost been killed by young Master Knight. Just how strong was he? Brittany was so scared that she broke out in a cold sweat. She simply didn't dare to imagine it. Fortunately, she had reacted fast enough. Otherwise, the young mistress would have died in vain. Kamiya also walked over. When she saw Luff, she let out a sigh of relief. When she heard Luff's voice, she confirmed his identity. He was the B** starred from that night, the person she had been thinking about. Therefore, she knew that her good friend, Elizabeth, was no match for him. His rune ability was too strange and powerful. He had many abilities that ordinary people couldn't imagine. Facing this B***starred, Elizabeth's ending would definitely have been miserable. Kamiya thought of herself as a genius. She was powerful and had always been arrogant. However, after seeing Luffy's methods, she understood the gap between them. In front of her were two people. One was her good sister, and the other was her man. She did not feel good about either of these two being injured. Therefore, she subconsciously shouted. However, after shouting, she regretted it. If he didn't know that she had recognized him, wouldn't she be exposed if she shouted? But when she heard him say that he was being pursued, Kamiya's heart instantly became anxious. Could it be that the queen, that old witch, had discovered something? Kamiya naturally thought of the matter of Luffy assassinating Berg, and thought that this matter had been exposed. Although she was worried, she couldn't take the initiative to ask what was happening. Fortunately, Brittany asked, 13th young master, are you being pursued? What's going on? Oh right, put down my lady first, we are not the people who are pursuing you. Okay. Luffy smiled and agreed. With a thought, he unsealed the time prohibition ability. There was only 1 minute, and it was wasted here. However, if it was not for the time prohibition ability, Luffy would have been shocked by Elizabeth's speed. In a panic, he might not have been able to use better methods to stop her. Elizabeth regained her thoughts very quickly. She was about to make a move when she suddenly discovered that her veil was in the hands of the handsome male opposite her. Furthermore, Brittany and Kamiya had also suddenly appeared beside her at some point in time. This caused Elizabeth to be startled. What's going on? How did they appear beside me in an instant? Under the effect of the speed rune, she had been about to kill this person when the situation in front of her changed in the next instant. In her subjective time, everything happened in an instant. However, in such a short period of time, Brittany and Kamiya had also appeared here. Furthermore, her veil had been taken away by someone. She knew that if this man wanted to kill her, she was already dead. How did this youth do it? What's going on? Elizabeth was shocked, but there was nothing that looked unusual on the surface. Misunderstanding. This is a misunderstanding. Luffy spread his hands. I thought you were here to kill us, and seeing your murderous intent, I retaliated. Fortunately, I heard Brittany's voice in time, or else the misunderstanding would have been huge. Miss, this is young Master 13. Very handsome, right? Brittany smiled and said, Miss, this really is a misunderstanding. Young Master 13 is not a bad person. Oh right. Miss, what happened just now? Why did you suddenly stand motionlessly in front of young Master 13? Hearing these words, Elizabeth was extremely shocked. Had she stood motionlessly in front of this youth? She hurriedly asked Brittany, how much time has passed since I stopped moving and I returned to normal? About half a minute. Brittany thought for a moment. To be precise, it should be less than a minute. Less than a minute. She looked at Luffy with a face full of shock. From Brittany's point of view, less than a minute was indeed very short. It was only a matter of more than 10 breaths. However, only Elizabeth understood how terrifying it was. On the battlefield, or in a fight with an enemy, a second of time difference could determine the victory of a battle. Victory and defeat were often decided in an instant. Had she really not moved for nearly a minute? In her consciousness, she only felt that a second had passed, but outside, it was actually nearly a minute. In this 1 minute, when she was unconscious and on guard, this man could kill her countless times. What kind of rune ability was this? It was too terrifying. This man was strong in every way. You are 13th young Master Knight. Elizabeth looked at Luffy and asked softly. These past few days, she had heard Brittany constantly mentioning Luffy's codename, and her ears were almost calloused. Brittany had always talked about how good the 13th young master was, but she had not taken it to heart. In other words, she did not think that he could be as good as Brittany had said. Before this, Elizabeth had thought that there were not many people around that she could really take to heart. What right and pride did she have to ignore some so-called geniuses? These geniuses could not even be considered geniuses in front of her. They would pale in comparison to Elizabeth. She had never expected that this 13 would actually be so powerful. She had made the first move. Under the extreme speed of the speed rune, how could she lose so badly? This 13 looked like he was only 1 or 2 years older than her, but he was much more powerful than her. Yes, it's me. Luff smiled and nodded. Rexton's voice came from afar. Are you done yet? I've made tea. Coming. Luff turned around and replied. Rexton walked over and took a look. He was completely dumbfounded. Kamiya. The girl at the front desk of Dawn Hotel. Could the beautiful woman next to her be the legendary Elizabeth? Looking at Luff standing there, chatting and laughing with them, Rexton was very envious, but he also knew that he was completely unqualified. They were all freakish geniuses. Perhaps only people like Knight could catch their eyes. There was one female here, Vivian. There were two more beautiful women over there. This was too much for the opposite sex. Kamiya looked at Luff, who was still holding Elizabeth's veil. She felt slightly uncomfortable and said softly, Young master, since it's a misunderstanding, shouldn't you return the veil to Elizabeth? Those who don't know will think that you have some special thing for veils. Hearing this, Luff was slightly stunned and looked at her in surprise. This woman actually had emotion in her words. Her tone of voice was also strange. Those who did not know her would think that she was jealous. Luff's thoughts were indeed correct. At this moment, Kamiya was feeling jealous. Looking at her man holding someone else's veil in his hand, she felt particularly awkward. Moreover, it was her sister's veil. This feeling was even more uncomfortable. She could not help but have some strange emotion in her words. It's purely a misunderstanding. Luff smiled awkwardly, then returned the veil to Elizabeth. I was so engrossed in chatting that I almost forgot about your veil. Here. Elizabeth was about to say that she did not want it anymore because she had never used anything that had been touched by a man. But if she did not want it, wouldn't the veil become his trophy? And it was a veil. In the age of the rune world, the veil represented a woman's chastity and secrecy. How could she possibly leave it? Hence, Elizabeth swallowed her rejection. She took her veil and put it back into the runic space. Then, she took out a new veil and put it on. When she saw that Elizabeth had actually taken the veil back, Kamiya felt uncomfortable again. She laughed strangely. Elizabeth, didn't you say that you don't touch anything that a man touches? Why did you make an exception for this young master this time? Could it be that you see this young master's good looks? Is a young girl in love? Luff was speechless. What on earth was this woman trying to do? It was only a trivial matter. Did she have to care so much? Moreover, the current Kamiya was completely different from the previous Kamiya. The current Kamiya did not have that cold and calm state at all. Her emotions fluctuated greatly, just like an ordinary woman. Was she really jealous? Why had this woman changed so much? When Elizabeth heard Kamiya's words, she suddenly felt a little anxious. She hurriedly explained, Sister Kamiya, don't misunderstand. It's not what you think. I have no interest in this man. Luff was stunned. Why did Elizabeth's explanation feel a little strange? The way he looked at Elizabeth and Kamiya instantly felt wrong. Were they lesbians? If that was the case, then everything could be explained. Luff instantly felt that he understood. No wonder Kamiya felt weird. She wasn't jealous of him, but of Elizabeth. Kamiya used to be so aloof, but it turned out that she just didn't like men. Luff felt very funny. But he didn't feel uncomfortable at all. If Elizabeth was a man, then he might have felt a little uncomfortable. Although Kamiya wasn't his girlfriend or wife, she was a woman who had had a passionate night with him and had sex with him. As a man, he absolutely wouldn't be able to accept that the woman he had had sex with wanted someone else. But the other party was a woman. Moreover, she was such a beautiful woman. This changed Luff's attitude. Brittany felt that the atmosphere was strange, so she quickly changed the topic and said to Luff, 13th young master, don't worry. My mistress is like this. Oh right, what's the matter with the pursuit you mentioned? Hearing this, Kamiya also looked at Luff. She was also very worried about this issue. She wanted to know what was going on. This matter is a little complicated. Luff smiled and said, there are a few of my friends waiting for me over there. They are Rexton and the others. They have just made tea. Let's talk while we drink some. This matter is a little interesting. Sure. Kamiya smiled and nodded. I am thirsty. Miss, let's go. Brittany also followed. Elizabeth looked at Kamiya and Brittany without saying a word. You know those people, but I don't know them. However, seeing that Brittany and Kamiya had already gone over, she had no choice but to go. So she decided to follow. After all, she had been defeated by this young Master 13 previously, and she had been the first one to make a move. It was really difficult for her to put on a haughty attitude. Claire, pour some tea. Coming, young master. Claire brought over an exquisite tea set. After serving the tea, she looked at Brittany and her eyes were filled with surprise. Brittany, you're here. Yes. Brittany nodded happily. Brittany had a deep impression of Claire. She remembered that the 13th young master had told her that this was a little girl who did not know anything but was working hard to learn. It was clear that he valued this little girl very much. Elizabeth glanced at her maid, Brittany. How many people did this girl know behind her back? Rexton and the other two were a little awkward in the group. They did not know what to say. After all, they were not in the same circle. Luff did not think too much. He looked at them and said speechlessly, "Why did you guys run so far away? Come over and chat with us." The three of them looked at each other and quietly walked over. However, they did not speak. In the end, it was Luff who told them what had happened. He smiled and said, "That's what happened. I was waiting for a slightly stronger opponent, but your carriage came over, and there was a misunderstanding." Kamiya and the other two understood it was just a misunderstanding. But wasn't your operation a little too forceful? Were you being hunted? You were the one who was being hunted. She couldn't help but mourn for the queen of the Simon Empire. She had encountered a person who didn't play by the normal rules. You chased after him, but he didn't plan to escape at all. Instead, he waited here for you to send people over, and then prepared to kill as many people as you sent until you didn't dare to send any more people to chase after him. She could tell from this that Luff looked very gentle on the surface and had an indifferent temperament. But in reality, he was a ruthless person. Elizabeth was secretly scared. Fortunately, her maid, Brittany, had a good relationship with this man. If he hadn't heard Brittany's voice, she felt that this man would never show mercy. In front of him, there was only the enemy. The enemy was the enemy, regardless of gender. She wouldn't show mercy just because she was a woman, nor would she show mercy because of her beauty. No matter how beautiful she was, as long as she was an enemy, she would still have to be killed. From 13's counter-attacks, he was definitely the type of person who was decisive when killing. His heart was very clear, and he wouldn't be swayed by external things. Kamiya and Brittany felt a little lucky. A person like young Master 13 would be very good to have as a friend. From the way he stood up for Vivian and from the way he treated Rexton and Lorca as friends, he was different from others. When he made friends, he would never consider the other party's talent, family background, or identity. That was a very superior mentality. It seemed that when he made friends, he would never care about their talent because no matter how good they were not as good as him. Making friends completely depended on his mood. Not only was he good to his friends, but he was also very good to his own handmaidens. Once someone became his enemy, it would be a nightmare. From the pursuit to the counter-pursuit, that kind of decisive and fierce method made people feel afraid. Kamiya was not surprised at all. That night, she had found out what kind of person this B***starred was. For him, this reaction was too normal. So what if it was a counter-pursuit? He was the man who had dared to assassinate a prince of a country. The only thing that made Kamiya uncomfortable was that he had actually gone to this extent for a woman. He hadn't hesitated to offend the queen of the Simon Empire. After drinking 2 cups of tea, Kamiya still couldn't figure out how she was inferior to Vivian. In terms of talent, in terms of appearance. Which part of her wasn't stronger than Vivian? Why was this guy so cold to her? Especially that night, when this B***starred had taken her body, he still looked disgusted and had wanted to leave as soon as possible. After arriving here, he was very gentle to everyone, but he didn't even look at her. No matter what, she was still this B***starred's woman. Although her attitude before had been cold, and there was something wrong with what she did, there was a reason. Can't you give me a chance to explain? Heartless man. B***starred. Kamiya cursed in her heart, wishing she could bite Luff. Alright, there was no chance to talk alone now since they met on the road. But no matter what, she couldn't let him run away. He had already slept with her, and her heart was occupied by him. It was impossible for her to take off her pants and refuse to admit her debt. She had many thoughts in her heart, but on the surface, she maintained a peaceful appearance. She quietly listened to their conversation from the side, and among them. Brittany played the role of connecting everyone because she was very familiar with every person here. Even Claire would talk to her. 13th Young Master. In this exam of the Hope Empire's Rune Academy, how many divine monuments do you think you can light up? Brittany asked curiously. Young Master 13 was even more powerful than her family's young miss. This kind of talent was definitely a genius-level examinee. I don't know, Luff said softly. With Elizabeth and Camia here, perhaps it was time to make up a good story. Looking at the disbelief in everyone's eyes, Luff said helplessly, I really don't know. This is my first time in the 9 great empires, so I have no idea about this exam at all. My master didn't tell me about this either. Luff took advantage of the situation and went into the mode of a story king. He started to make things up. He only said that he wanted me to take a look, and he didn't give me any specific instructions. I didn't care about what I should look at or what I should do. Basically, I just took one step at a time and went to the Pharaoh Empire. Brittany was the one who reminded me, so I thought of going to the Shijiao Empire to take a look. Me. Brittany was completely stunned. When did I ever remind you? How could I not remember? Yes, it was you. Luff smiled. Do you remember a few mornings ago? When I had gone back to rest from the cultivation room, someone came to check on my room. That was when you asked me. You said that you would go back to the Shijiao Empire. At that time, I decided to go to the Shijiao Empire to take a look. Brittany remembered. But at that time, Brittany thought that Luff was the 13th prince of the Shijiao Empire. That was why she had asked this question. Who knew that everyone was wrong? The 13th prince actually came from the heavenly battlefield. All right. It was indeed me. Brittany said helplessly, but it was also a misunderstanding. That's because I thought that you were the 13th prince of the Shijiao Empire. Who knew that you actually came from the heavenly battlefield? Oh right, our miss has also been to the heavenly battlefield. You must have a common topic to talk about. As long as there was a chance, Brittany, this little girl, wanted to set up her miss and the 13th prince together. Because she felt that other than the 13th prince, no one else could match up to her miss. Good heavens, Elizabeth had actually been to the heavenly battlefield. But the problem was that he had never been there. He had been casually spouting nonsense. But he could not panic at this time. He had to change from being passive to being proactive. He smiled at Elizabeth and said, Miss Elizabeth, where have you been? I haven't been to many places. I've stayed in Sun City for a few days. I've also visited the boundary wall and passed by the place of death. There aren't many other places. I've only been to the heavenly battlefield 3 times, and I didn't stay for a long time. I don't know much about it, Elizabeth said softly. This answer instantly made Luff heave a sigh of relief. I like it when you don't know much about it. If I really know about it, won't I be exposed? Luff already had a plan in his heart. He firmly grasped the initiative and said with a smile, I have some small things here. I don't know if you recognize them. After saying that, he took out the boundary iron that was the size of a table. It looked like he was testing Elizabeth's knowledge, but in fact, he wanted her to help him appraise the treasure. Because there were many things that he did not know, and so he did not know how to use them. These things could not be easily taken out, and they would easily arouse the suspicion of others. This was just such an opportunity. So he was prepared to ask Elizabeth to help him. It would be even better if he could know what it did. Boundary iron, it's so big. Elizabeth's face was filled with shock. The way she looked at Luff was different. Not only her, Brittany, Camia, Vivian, Rexton, and Lorca all looked at Luff in shock. They had all seen boundary iron before, but they had never seen such a big piece. At this moment, Lorca thought of the fist-sized boundary iron that he had originally planned to give to Luff. Then, he looked at Luff's boundary iron. It was as big as a table. He finally understood why Luff had said that he had many of these things that day. He really had not been boasting. He really did not lack these things. 13. Is this the little thing you were talking about? Rexton looked at Luff speechlessly and said, do you have some misunderstanding about the little thing? This was clearly a blatant display of wealth. It's not a big deal. Luff's expression was calm as he put away the boundary iron. Then, he took out a piece of wood that was about a meter long and as thick as a bowl. This piece of wood was completely red and emitted a fragrance. Miss Elizabeth, do you recognize this? When they saw Luff remove this from the space, everyone's eyes immediately widened, and even their breathing became a lot more solemn. It was confirmed. Young Master 13 was showing off his wealth. This is phoenix wood. As long as it's a plant-type rune and phoenix wood is used, it will be able to increase the level. Elizabeth's expression was filled with surprise. My family also has a piece of phoenix wood, but it's not as thick as yours or as big as this one. The phoenix wood can only grow in the area where the phoenix resides. The phoenix is a creature from another dimension, and it's extremely powerful. That's why the phoenix wood is extremely precious, and it's very difficult for ordinary people to obtain it. She wasn't the only one who knew what it was apart from Luff, everyone here knew what it was. They also knew the use of the phoenix wood. They also knew the value of the phoenix wood. It was able to raise the level of runes. Different treasures had different effects on runes. Plant-type runes were able to absorb the phoenix wood and raise to high-level runes. With this ability, the phoenix wood was one of the best treasures. Upgrading runes was an extremely difficult matter. Many rune masters had been at the same level from the first time they condensed runes. No matter how hard they worked, there wouldn't be any changes. Some rune masters had spent a lot of time and energy to barely raise the level of runes. If the runes they condensed were of a low level, their combat power wouldn't be that high, and it would even determine the upper limit of their strength. But with the phoenix wood, they would be able to upgrade their runes to high-level runes, and from then on, they would possess powerful rune power. Auctions would occasionally have the phoenix wood appear, and just a small section would be auctioned off for an astronomical price. Yet young Master 13 actually had such a large section, and it looked like the quality was outstanding. Even among the phoenix wood, it was the best of the best. This kind of treasure was simply priceless. A piece of boundary iron the size of a table and a large piece of phoenix wood. It looked like young Master 13 was only showing off his wealth. 13. No, brother, you're my biological brother. Rexton grabbed Luff's arm and said shamelessly, do you still lack a servant beside you who can serve tea and water? Get lost. All right, brother. Luff looked at Rexton speechlessly. Then, he sighed in his heart. The phoenix wood could raise rune levels. To others, it was indeed very precious. But to him, it was useless. He didn't need to raise runic levels at all. The system had directly converted the English language into runes, and they were all purple runes of the highest level. There were even 2 golden runes that surpassed the level of this world. Therefore, he did not need to worry about the level of his runes at all. In that case, the phoenix wood would not be of much use. What he needed now was something that could improve his knowledge of runes. His understanding and use of runes were very shallow, to the point that he could barely reach the level of a passerby. He could only use runes simply. If it was not for the fact that his rune abilities were so powerful, Luff would not have had such terrifying combat strength. That was why he wanted to enter the Rune Academy. On one hand, he wanted to learn about runes in this world. On the other hand, he wanted to improve his usage of the runes. Luff had some basic knowledge of runes, which was equivalent to the level of a middle school student. It was completely insufficient. Moreover, this was without the 1 million sounds of runes. His current strength was completely supported by the strength of runes. He was like a peerless swordsman. With the world's #1 blade, he could scare people with just his blade. However, if he had a good set of blade techniques, his strength would increase tremendously. This was Luff's current situation. The path of runes in this world was generally divided into 3 steps. First, condense runes. Second, learn advanced rune knowledge. Third, upgrade runes. For many people who had special conditions in their families, such as Camia and Elizabeth, almost all 3 steps were done at the same time. However, Luff was still stuck at the first step, no. The first step was still at the beginning. After all, it would only take a few days for him to become a rune master. Then, he would have to participate in the assessment with those geniuses who had studied for more than 10 years. One could imagine how tiring it would be. The phoenix wood was a good thing, but it was not of much use to Luff, so he was a little disappointed. Everyone looked at his disappointed face and was speechless. They all ridiculed in their hearts. Brother, you took out 2 valuable treasures to provoke us. You were clearly flaunting your wealth, so how could you be disappointed? What kind of mental journey was this? Sigh. Luff sighed softly. He casually put away the phoenix wood and took out a dark purple flower. It was only the size of his palm, but it was as exquisite as a work of art. There were 7 petals on its body, and it emitted a faint sound that shook people's hearts. Miss Elizabeth, do you recognize this flower? Everyone was petrified again. Especially Rexton. This time, he directly stood up. No, I have to go take a breath. If this continued, he suspected that he would suddenly have a heart attack. If he hadn't made a mistake, they were all legendary treasures. 13 had taken out 3 of them in a short while. Who knew how many good things there were in his runic space? Netherworld flower. Kamiya was a little uneasy at this moment. This was the Netherworld flower. She had only seen it once when she was young. That was a gift from the Simon Empire to the Queen. At this moment, without waiting for Elizabeth to speak, she said it herself, Netherworld flower. Legend has it that the flower takes 100 years to bloom, but it only blooms for a quarter of an hour. If it cannot be picked within this quarter of an hour, the Netherworld flower will wither. 100 years, only a quarter of an hour, the time needed to pick the flower. The world calls it the Netherworld flower. Such words are extremely beneficial to the soul. Legend has it that it can directly upgrade soul-type runes to high-grade runes. It is precisely for this reason that the Netherworld flower has an extremely high value, and it is even rarer than the phoenix wood. The Netherworld flower was born in one of the most mysterious places in the rune world, the Netherworld, which is also known as Hell. The Netherworld is extremely strange and terrifying, and there are dangers everywhere, so every Netherworld flower has an extremely high value. Kamiya was really shocked. She knew that this man had come from the heavenly battlefield. She also knew that he might have a considerable amount of wealth. But she never thought that he would actually show off to such an extent. The most terrifying thing was that he did actually have such wealth. The old man he spoke of, which was also his master, had such a great background. If he dared to give these things to 13, wasn't he afraid of people snatching them? 13. Enough, enough. Rexton felt that his heart couldn't take it anymore. He hurriedly said, stop here. Don't take out anything else. Even if you leave here and go outside, don't take them out. These treasures are too touching. The 9 empires are not the celestial battlefield. Everything depends on strength. The roads here are slippery and complicated. Remember one sentence. Don't reveal your wealth. Vivian nodded in agreement. It was the first time she spoke. You should be more cautious when you're in the Shijiao Empire. More than half of the experts of the 9 empires are there. You've only just come to the 9 empires. You can't trust others too much. You have to be more careful. Using her woman's intuition, Vivian could feel that the way Kamiya looked at him was somewhat different. Luff nodded. He hadn't known about this situation before. He hadn't recognized these things at first, which was why he had taken them out to show them to Elizabeth. Who knew that the Queen would put such a valuable item in Berg's vault? Luff had thought that it was just an ordinary treasure. If he had known about this earlier, these treasures would have been extremely valuable. Only a fool would take them out. Of course, even though they were thinking this in their hearts, they couldn't say it out loud. Luff smiled and said, don't worry. I'm not that stupid. I won't take these things out when I'm outside. There are friends here and no outsiders. No one here will betray me. There were 2 meanings behind his words. The first meaning was that I treat you all as friends. That's why I took these things out for you to see. I believe in you. The second meaning meant that there weren't many people there anyway. If anyone betrayed him, he would be able to guess who it was. Betray you. I choose death. Rexton mumbled, 13, I've seen through you. There's nothing I can say about you when it comes to your friends. You're also ruthless when it comes to your enemies. Your methods are ruthless. I feel that it's better to be your friend than be your enemy. He seemed to be talking about himself. In fact, he was warning Elizabeth and Kamiya. Rexton's words were meant to warn Kamiya and Elizabeth. Don't get any ideas. If you can't kill 13 in one go, you'll be waiting for his crazy revenge. Kamiya gave Rexton a sidelong glance. What do you mean by that? Are you worried that I would betray 13? I was worried that you would betray him. He was my man. There was something wrong with me. Elizabeth smiled and said nothing. She was the first goddess of the Dawn Empire, and that title alone was enough. The treasures that 13 had brought out were very rare and they had shocked her. But that was all. The prideful first goddess wouldn't have any bad thoughts about these things. Moreover, even though these things were rare, her family definitely didn't lack them. It was just that she didn't need these things for the time being, so she hadn't seen many of them. After she became an intermediate level rune master, her family would naturally prepare these for her. How could the imperial family of the Dawn Empire lack these things? Hehe, another guest. Using his super senses, Luff noticed more than a dozen people were rushing towards them aggressively. He stood up and rubbed his hands excitedly. You guys chat first, I'll go deal with them. He could fight again. Luff was starting to get addicted to using runes to fight. It was as if he was a gamer, controlling his character and winning one battle after another. The cooled blood in his body started to boil again. He sighed in his heart. I hope that the opponents this time won't disappoint me. When Elizabeth heard Luff's words, her large beautiful eyes lit up. She stood up and quickly followed him. It just so happens that I don't have much to do, so let's play together and see who kills the most. Rexton and the others were left behind. They looked at each other in shock. Oh my god. Who were these people? Had killing people become a game to them? Those were the soldiers sent by the Simon Empire to kill them. Why did it sound as if they were chopping vegetables? When they were being chased, they could only hide in the corners. They had no choice but to rely on 13. Now, this little angel-like girl actually wanted to compete with 13 to see who killed more people. Rexton and the others almost vomited blood. Fortunately, there was already Luff, or they would have been struck down by Elizabeth's words. When the last ray of light in the sky was swallowed, endless killing intent accompanied the darkness. Dozens of riders charged over aggressively. The aura emanating from their bodies was much stronger than the soldiers who had been chasing them for the past few days. Elizabeth's figure had already disappeared. However, the endless killing intent was shocking. Although she had not shown anything when they were chatting, with the pride in her heart, how could she allow herself to be defeated so thoroughly? When she had the chance to prove herself, she would prove her strength to Luff. In fact, she was not inferior at all. This was the pride of the imperial family that she came from the Dawn Empire. Her ancestor was the Dawn Rune King. One of the three great Rune Kings. It's Anthony. Kamiya also stood up. He is the first prince of the Simon Empire. He graduated from the Rune School last year and was also the #1 genius of the Simon Empire back then. I think he should have already condensed more than 20 runes. He's now a 5-star rune master, and his strength is incomparably powerful. Other than some old monsters of the Simon Empire who are in closed-door cultivation and some high-level rune masters who rarely appear, Anthony can be said to be the strongest person in the Simon Empire. I'll go with you. Even Kamiya, who was as arrogant as a peacock, was incomparably nervous at this moment. She could not maintain her inner peace. At this moment, she was no longer willing to hide anything. She was only concerned about Luff's safety. Her eyes did not conceal her concern for him. At this moment, Luff turned around to take a look and saw Kamiya's gaze. His entire body trembled slightly. He knew that she had recognized him. Although he did not know how she had recognized him, it was no longer important now. He looked at Kamiya and smiled. You look good like this. You're a little feminine. You're not as cold as before. You were like an iceberg. You don't have to come and cause trouble. Even if I die, it's useless for you to come. If I don't die, ha ha ha, I'll come back and cook something delicious for you. Luff laughed loudly. His figure disappeared in an instant. Half a minute later, his figure had already surpassed Elizabeth. He smiled and said, actually, you don't have to get involved in this mess. Are you afraid that you haven't killed as many people as I have? Elizabeth shook her head and replied softly. Her speed soared once again. Me? Afraid? Yes, I'm afraid that you're dead. Remember to run away when you encounter danger. This time, it's the first prince of the Simon Empire, Anthony. He's a graduate of the Rune Academy. He's different from that trash who came to court death previously. Don't try to be brave. Safety first. Just as Luff had finished his sentence, he entered a state of invisibility, and his mind was in an absolutely calm state. Although the blood in his body was boiling, his heart and mind were calm. If his mind was affected by the boiling battle intent, then he would just be a boor. He would die a terrible death. To be a truly powerful warrior, other than using his strong body, it was more important to use his wisdom. Wisdom was something that others could not defend against. No matter how strong a body was, there was a limit. It couldn't be as strong as steel. Even if Luff's body was metallized, he could still be killed by a powerful force. Therefore, the most important thing was to know how to use his wisdom to defeat the enemy. Space runes, fate runes, time runes, power runes, and various other runes were blooming with dazzling light. At this moment, they were at their peak. Luff's mind was spinning rapidly. This was the first time he had used all the runic abilities he had condensed at full strength. All the abilities worked together smoothly as if they were a precise machine. Countless steel bars peeled off from the ruins. They turned into red fire sticks that burned with a dazzling light. The water in the air, under Luff's control, condensed into sharp ice blades. The originally desolate land was overturned like an office in an earthquake. Many plants sprouted from the ground and grew crazily. In an instant, they grew to a height of more than 10 meters, forming thick vines that twined around the tree. Thousands of red steel bars and thousands of ice blades shot toward the pursuers like a meteor shower. Holy shield! An earth-shattering roar. Immediately after, a huge translucent shield emitted a faint blue light. It was like a magic city wall, blocking all of Luff's attacks. Suddenly, another figure appeared beside Luff, and then again. 2, 3, 4. More and more figures of Luff appeared on the battlefield. It was impossible to tell which one was the real Luff. The leader was Anthony. He was tall and sturdy. He shouted while wearing armor, "How dare you show off in front of me? Kill!" He led his subordinates and rushed into the sea of people that Luff had created. The machete in his hand emitted a cold light as it reaped the phantoms. Luff's eyes were indifferent as he looked at Anthony, who was running back and forth within 100 meters radius. This Anthony was indeed very strong. Not only was he able to block his rain of steel bar knives, but he was also able to easily kill his doppelganger. However, the other soldiers under him were not so lucky. Especially the soldiers who were not protected by Anthony's holy shield were unlucky. They were directly pierced by the steel bars and nailed to the ground. In a few dozen seconds, more than 20 people died under the rain of steel bars and knives from Luff. At the same time, the fog that represented luck began to float toward Luff, gathering above his head. This was a fate rune ability that Luff had just comprehended in the past few days. In front of him was the new ability of the fate runes. Luck flowed. After killing others, these people's luck would flow directly to Luff, changing his luck. After the 20 people had been killed by him, the fog above Luff's head turned from yellow to light green. This made Luff feel very excited. If he killed more people, wouldn't he have the same extreme luck as Kamiya and the others? It was a pity that he had only awakened this ability now. If he had awakened it before, his luck would have at least turned blue. With good luck, he could do anything. However, the next second, the color of luck above his head changed from light green to pitch black. This made his heart tighten. What was going on? Pitch black luck represented death. Could it be that Anthony could threaten his life? He didn't act rashly. Instead, after thinking for a short time, he carefully arranged the surrounding battlefield environment. In the environment, Anthony displayed his divine might. He was indeed very brave and powerful. He had already killed hundreds of Luff's phantoms. After a bit of struggle, only Luff was left. Anthony's eyes were cold. This is your illusion. It's just so-so. Compared to the environment created by the Rune Academy's divine monument, this illusion of yours is just a fart. I am under the orders of the Queen to come here and take the lives of you traitors. None of you will live. Being able to die under my hands is the greatest honor of your life. A green ball of light appeared next to Anthony. Within the ball of light, runes appeared one after another. Luff did not recognize any of these runes, but with the system's conversion, he recognized their contents. The runes bloomed in the sky and then combined into a group of runes: violence, killing enemies, bloodlust, cruelty, evil, power, slaughter. Dozens of runes formed phrases in the air and surrounded Anthony. Anthony's aura rose endlessly. Even his dark hair was shaken by this aura and floated in midair. He looked like a god of war who had descended into the world. Damn, can runes be played like this? Luff stared at Anthony with wide eyes. He had really learned a lot. This was the first time Luff had seen a way to combine runes. It had to be said that Anthony was once the #1 genius of the Simon Empire and a graduate of the Rune Academy. Just this move alone made Luff feel that it was not simple. However, Anthony thought that he had broken his illusion. But in fact, he was still in Luff's illusion and not managed to break through it at all. What he saw of Luff was also an illusion. However, the strength that Anthony displayed was just enough to test Luff's current strength. He was like a rock sharpening a knife. All along, other than Elizabeth, none of the opponents that Luff had met were comparable to Anthony. Therefore, Anthony could be said to be the strongest enemy that he had ever met. Especially since the luck above his head had turned pitch black, Anthony could very possibly pose a danger to him. The thought that he might be in a life and death crisis made his blood boil again. The stronger the opponent, the more excited he would be. Therefore, in the illusion, he fought with Anthony. Luff had many tricks up his sleeve. He used all kinds of rune abilities to his heart's content. He controlled the airflow, the metal, the fire, the water flow, the plants, the soil. As he fought, Luff had a sudden idea. He gathered the air together and made a simplified version of an oxygen bomb. However, none of these had any effect on Anthony. His Holy Shield rune was a high-level blue rune. It was extremely sturdy and could block most attacks. Luff's attacks had no effect on Anthony. It couldn't break through his defense. Luff's rune was a purple rune. Its level was higher than Anthony's, and it was even rarer. However, Luff was only a 2-star rune master. Anthony was a 5-star rune master. One was a low-level rune master, while the other was an intermediate rune master. The difference in the quality of the energy here was too great. If it were any other low-level rune master, they would have easily been killed by Anthony. Only Luff was able to contend against Anthony with his high-level and powerful runes. He's really an expert. But he's a good sparring partner. In the environment, Luff could do whatever he wanted. After all, it was an illusion, and he wouldn't really die. Since Anthony was such a good target, it would be a waste of resources if he didn't make good use of the situation. They wouldn't be able to meet each other normally. Although the various runes were useless against Anthony, Anthony's attacks in the illusion didn't have any effect either. Although Luff's body was constantly damaged by Anthony's attacks in the environment, under the treatment of the healing runes, he quickly recovered. Luff smiled wickedly as he walked towards Anthony. Anthony was currently using long-range attacks that were extremely powerful. Luff continued to move forward while enduring Anthony's attacks. His body was damaged and he was healing at the same time, so his speed was quite slow. It was impossible for him to get close to Anthony so slowly. Luff wasn't satisfied. Teleport. Under Luff's control, the fake clone teleported to Anthony's side. In an instant, the time suppression ability was activated once again. Outside the illusion, Luff couldn't help but complain to himself. This Anthony is really strong. If I hadn't teleported and used time suppression, there really would have been no way to deal with him this time. What's the situation? In the illusion, a blue destruction rune flew out of Anthony's body. Luff's ability to stop time was actually destroyed by him. A time-type rune. You actually have a time-type rune. Anthony's face was filled with shock as he looked at Luff with a grave expression. His heart was like a surging wave. His emotions were fluctuating intensely and he could not calm down. Time runes were the legendary runes. They were incomparably powerful and extremely strange. Every rune master who was able to possess time runes would have extremely terrifying combat strength. The two most powerful runes recognized by the rune world were space and time runes. No one dared to offend a rune master who possessed these two runes. If they were to accidentally offend him, then it would definitely be very difficult for them to face him. He wouldn't even know how he died. That was why Anthony was so shocked. He didn't think that this youth in front of him would actually be able to possess a time rune. At the same time, Anthony also felt a lingering fear. His back was drenched in sweat. You are very powerful. You can even be said to be an extremely rare genius in the past 100 years of runic time. Unfortunately, your strength is still too weak. If you were a little stronger, I definitely wouldn't be able to destroy your time prohibition ability, Anthony said coldly. Luff was still a 2-star rune master. There was a full 3 levels of difference between him and Anthony. This was a gap that was very difficult to cross. If Luff was a little stronger, perhaps he would have been able to kill Anthony just now. Anthony didn't dare to imagine how powerful Luff would become in the future if he was allowed to grow. He might even become the future Rune King. Thinking of this, killing intent flashed in Anthony's eyes. He absolutely couldn't let this youth live, or else the Simon Empire would definitely be finished. Ha ha ha, it's a good thing that you haven't grown up yet. You can't hurt me now. I originally thought that this was just a boring mission, but I didn't expect to have such a harvest. After I kill you, I'll peel off your runes from your soul, and everything you have will belong to me. When one was a rune master, the runes wouldn't disappear immediately, but would temporarily remain in the body of the soul. Therefore, one could peel off these runes from the soul and keep them for themselves. Many rune masters would take the initiative to peel off the runes before they died and gift them to their juniors. Who wouldn't be tempted by time runes? Anthony's face was full of excitement. It was as if he could already see that he had time runes. When that happened, he would become even stronger. It was very likely that he would be the next rune king, able to dominate the world. Countless rune powers turned into a red light, directly tearing Luff into pieces in the illusion. Ha ha ha, the time rune belongs to me now. Anthony laughed wildly. He really wanted to investigate Luff's corpse but discovered that Luff was just like the phantoms he had killed before, turning into powder and disappearing. How is this possible? This place is actually still an illusion. Anthony's eyes were filled with shock. How could he not be shocked? He originally thought that everything was within his grasp. He had even imagined what he would look like after he possessed the time rune. He did not expect that this place was actually still an illusion. His chest immediately felt stuffy, and the blood all over his body surged up, almost giving him a mouthful of blood. Anthony could not believe that he had used all kinds of means just to kill a phantom. The more Anthony thought about it, the more shocked he became. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. The other party was looking at him coldly from the side, using the environment runes to force him to use all his methods. The rune ability couldn't be used indefinitely. No matter what rune it was, there would be a limit. The time limit, the consumption of spiritual power, and even some of the rune master's lifespan would be used up. Once his rune ability was almost exhausted, the other party could easily harvest his life. At this time, Anthony's physical strength was greatly exhausted. His limbs were already starting to become sore, and his spiritual power was also greatly exhausted, especially in order to break the other party's time restriction. In an instant, Anthony exploded with a large amount of energy, and for a moment, his mind was a little dizzy. This was one of the characteristics of mental exhaustion. The most important thing now was to think of a way to get rid of this illusion. Break. Anthony used the destruction rune again. This was the most powerful rune he currently had, and it was also the highest level blue rune. The destruction rune appeared in midair, and it quickly changed from a small blue dot to the size of a house, pressing down in midair. Anthony's expression was filled with dissatisfaction and crazy killing intent. The illusion requires spiritual power to call itself. Let's see if you can hold on or if I can hold on. When I break your illusion, it will be the moment of your death. Anthony shouted sternly. No matter what, he was still a graduate of the Rune Academy. He was also the first prince of the Simon Empire. His status was incomparably noble. Yet, he was actually being played by a brat. This was simply an insult. I really didn't expect that there would be someone like you around them. I heard that you came from the heavenly battlefield, right? Hehe, you are indeed very powerful. It's a pity that you haven't matured yet. Today, you will definitely die. Anthony's expression became increasingly malevolent. He had always been able to kill whoever he wanted. This had been especially so in the past few years. He held a high position and often tortured and killed commoners and some aristocrats. In short, anyone who did not listen to him would be mercilessly executed by him. He was already used to being a hunter. He even enjoyed it very much as he watched those people panic and be at a loss before they died. This illusion of yours can't trap me. I didn't expect those old fellows from the heavenly battlefield to be so generous. They actually taught you all the time and illusion runes. Anthony subconsciously thought that these old fellows from the heavenly battlefield taught Luff because these runes were extremely powerful and rare, especially the time runes. In the entire rune world, only a few of them appeared every 1,000 years. They weren't that easy to condense. Unfortunately, it's useless. Your runic strength is too low, and your attack methods are too simple. You can even say that they're extremely messy. You've simply wasted these powerful runes. After I kill you, these runes will all be mine. Everyone listen up. Help me kill this thief outside. Anthony thought he still had his soldiers waiting for him. However, he didn't know that these soldiers had already been killed by Luff in the first round of the reinforced knife rain. Their bodies were cold. Each and every one of them were nailed to the ground by the reinforced bar. Even the monsters that they had set off had been poked into sieves. They couldn't be any more dead. What Anthony saw had just been an illusion. Luff once again condensed a clone. Is this because of Vivian's sarcastic remark? Is there a need to make such a big commotion? To think that even you, the first prince of the Simon Empire, would not hesitate to run hundreds of miles to chase and kill her. There's really something wrong with all of you. Luff was really quite speechless. If it was to chase and kill him, it was understandable. After all, he had killed Berg. He had also broken into the queen's vault and robbed all of her treasures. But if it was because of Vivian's previous complaints about the Simon Empire, sending so many people to chase and kill her, and even slapping a prince out, it really made Luff feel that there was something wrong with him. The royal family of the Simon Empire was not only rotten, but there was also something wrong with their brains. A good empire did not think of ways to improve the lives of its people. Instead, they spent their efforts on dealing with people who had some opinions about the empire, thinking of exploiting and slaughtering civilians all day long. This country was really the strangest empire that Luff had ever seen. There were clearly so many fertile lands, vast fields, and so many people to govern. They could use these to develop a strong country, so that civilians, nobles, and the royal family could all live better lives. Yet, the royal family of this country did not follow the normal path. Unless the queen had found out that he had ransacked the vault. After all, the loss of the vault was too great. It contained the wealth and treasures that the queen had plundered for so many years. But she deserved it. She was the demon queen. She had caused such disaster to the good country. It was also good to slap Anthony. He was a living target. It just so happened to let Luff vent his anger towards the Simon Empire's royal family. It could also temper Luff's rune control ability. Kill. Anthony seemed to have gone crazy. He constantly used all sorts of methods and runes. Although he was unable to break Luff's illusion, it allowed Luff to slowly understand the limits of his runes and their various abilities. Luff didn't actually have to do anything. Just by relying on the illusion runes, he could slowly wear down Anthony to his death. Although Anthony's holy shield runes were very powerful, as long as his spiritual power was exhausted, he wouldn't be able to use the runes. At that time, Anthony would only have a body. He would be like a lion without teeth. He would just have to wait for death. Anthony was the first person that Luff had met since he transmigrated that could cause danger to his life. Therefore, he attached great importance to Anthony. He had already planned all kinds of methods to deal with him. This was the difference between Luff and the others. Most people, when faced with a problem, tended to take one step at a time. But Luff was different. He could deduce countless possibilities in his mind so that he could calmly deal with different situations. So, from beginning to end, Luff had a calm appearance. Because Luff had already expected most of the possible situations would appear, he had a way to deal with them. The original Luff definitely wouldn't have been able to do it, but with the runes, both his body and brain were completely transformed and strengthened. The speed of his thoughts was far faster than ordinary people. Especially after condensing the comprehension runes a few days ago, he maintained the state of comprehension at all times. Usually, as soon as a thought appeared in Luff's mind, he would immediately have the answer. Right now, there were only two ways to kill Anthony. One was to continue using the illusion rune to deplete Anthony's spiritual power. However, this was not the best way. There was a huge risk because using the illusion rune also required a large amount of spiritual power. Luff was only a 2-star rune now. If not for the fact that his spiritual power had skyrocketed after comprehending the Fate rune, it would have been used up long ago. Therefore, the two of them were really not sure who would use up all of their spiritual power first. The other way was to continue activating the Time rune. To stop Anthony from using it for a minute. During this time, Anthony's rune could not be used. Luff had already used it once, but it was destroyed by Anthony before it had any effect. However, Anthony had also used up a lot of spiritual power. He could still use the time rune, but Anthony might not be able to resist it after a few more tries. In other words, Luff had nearly 1 minute to kill Anthony. Logically speaking, he was already confident, but what if Anthony used other even stranger runes at the same time he broke the time ban rune? It would be very likely to break the illusion that he had set up. His chances of winning against Anthony were not high. After all, his Holy Shield rune was extremely sturdy. Luff could not even break Anthony's defense. After witnessing Anthony's unimaginable ability to use runes, Luff knew that he was still far from being able to use runes. Since he did not understand, he had to be even more careful. There was no shame in being cautious. Although Luff had so many powerful abilities, he had always been very calm and had not acted arrogantly. From the time he had assassinated Berg, it could be seen that he was a very cautious person. He had made plans to assassinate Berg far in advance, and in the end, he had perfectly assassinated Berg. He had even predicted that there would be people probing later on. In this aspect, Anthony could not compare to Luff. In terms of assassination, Luff could kill Anthony hundreds or thousands of times. At this moment, Anthony's destruction rune had covered half of the sky. It looked extremely huge. Even Kamiya and the others could see it clearly from afar. Not to mention Elizabeth, who was not far from Luff. Elizabeth was not in the illusion, so she could not see what was in the illusion. She could only see Anthony facing the air, as if he had gone crazy, displaying all kinds of his runes, and then talking to himself. After hearing Anthony's words, Elizabeth understood that he must have fallen into the illusion. Luff was still holding his hands and watching leisurely. Elizabeth's eyes flickered and she felt depressed. She had wanted to prove her strength, but she realized that she couldn't interfere at all. Anthony's subordinates had all been killed by Luff in an instant. She didn't even have the chance to make a move. And now, Anthony was trapped in an illusion. Looking at him from outside the illusion, he had an indifferent expression. Elizabeth knew that he still had many tricks that would be useless. This Anthony was going to die very soon. For a moment, Elizabeth felt conflicting emotions towards Luff. On one hand, she felt ashamed of her inferiority, on the other hand, she was surprised, and then, on the other hand, she felt strange. Luff's strength was stronger than hers. There was no doubt about this. However, she really did not know how to ridicule Luff's crude use of runes. This made Elizabeth a little happy. There were still some parts of this man that were inferior to her. His runes were powerful, but his attack methods were very simple. Kamiya could tell at a glance that this was definitely from the heavenly battlefield, and it was a battle method from at least a few decades ago. He pursued the power of runes, not the use of runes. The use of runes was constantly changing. Researching single runes, rune phrases, overlapping runes, and the fusion of runes, they were all trying to develop the strongest rune ability out of the limited number of runes. After all, the people in the rune world weren't as abnormal as Luff. It was extremely difficult for them to condense every single rune. Moreover, the runes that could be condensed into whatever ability or level were completely uncontrollable. This was why the importance of using runes was highlighted. If ordinary runes were used properly, they could still display their powerful abilities. But Luff was different. He could only use the abilities of the runes themselves. It seemed very simple and violent. But only a discerning person would be able to see it. Luff's battle was really very crude. What made Elizabeth feel the most helpless was that although Luff's runic ability was very crude, it was truly incomparably powerful. Moreover, there was more than one such powerful runic ability. From the start of the battle until now, Elizabeth had personally witnessed that Luff had at least 8 or more powerful abilities. How shocking was this? Rune masters in the rune world usually had 1 or 2 runes that were especially used for battle. The rest were only auxiliary runes. Every time a level was raised, a new battle rune would be comprehended. However, Luff was only a 2-star rune master, yet he still had more than 8 battle runes. Elizabeth had never heard of such a thing. She looked at Luff as if he was a monster. Just who was this man? He was a little too powerful. Right now, he only lacked knowledge regarding the usage of runes. Once he went to the Rune Academy to study, wouldn't his strength soar to the skies? Elizabeth was convinced. This time, she was completely convinced. After witnessing Luff's strange methods, she could not help but lower her proud head. Break for me. Anthony continuously roared in anger. The relief that enveloped a radius of several hundred meters was finally broken by him. Like a glass cover, it shattered inch by inch and finally disappeared. Not bad, you can actually break my illusion. Luff smiled and casually set up another illusion. He felt that his spiritual power was still very abundant and didn't seem to have been exhausted. He didn't know that ever since he had gotten the Time Rune and the Fate Rune, his brain had been expanded to an unimaginable extent. Other people's brains were like a small stream, at most a small river in comparison. A higher level rune master would be a river, a lake, and a sea. But Luff's brain was a vast ocean. Thus, his spiritual power skyrocketed to an extremely terrifying level. Anthony was dumbfounded. Just now, he had expended so much effort to break through an illusion, and now, the other party had set up another one without a hitch. This was too easy. Anthony was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. If this continued, sooner or later he would die from exhaustion. He took a few deep breaths and began to calm down the surging emotions in his heart. No, this is an illusion. But it's different from the illusion in the Rune Academy. Everything here is fake. The illusion is fake, and so is the person who attacked me. Since the person is fake, then I won't be harmed at all. If that's the case, why would I waste so much effort? I have no need to guard against the opponent's attack. I don't even need to break through his illusionary realm. I just need to stay in the environment. Not only can I take the opportunity to recover my physical strength and spiritual power, but the opponent will also exhaust his spiritual power by constantly maintaining the illusionary realm. Then he will definitely die. Anthony suddenly understood. He sat cross-legged on the ground and did not think about destroying Luff's illusions or blocking his attacks. Luff, who was outside the illusion environment, laughed. This is more fun. He did not expect Anthony to actually realize that the attacks in the illusions were fake. The only use was to test Anthony's runic ability. He could not kill Anthony. But because Anthony had seen the steel bar and knife rain in the beginning, he subconsciously treated everything as a real attack. When he thought everything in front of him was real, then everything was real. Although the damage from these things couldn't hurt Anthony's body, it could hurt his spirit and soul. Spirit was an extremely mysterious existence. A person could be blindfolded, with their hands and feet bound and then cut on his wrist, creating the sound of dripping water. That person's heart would think that the sound of dripping water was the blood flowing from the wound on his wrist, and he would become very frightened. That person would worry that he would die from excessive blood loss, and he would indeed die from excessive blood dripping, but in reality, there was not a single wound on his body. This was the function of the mind. The mind could kill the body. Luff moved. It was time to start the second step of the heart movement. Everything had just begun. Anthony thought that it was enough to see through the essence of the illusion. Little did he know that the illusion was far more than that. Luff's real body walked into the illusion and silently merged with his illusion environment. It was the same trick as before. Ice blades, steel bars, thorn vines, and fireballs pounced on Anthony. Fake. You still want to lie to me? Anthony sneered, his face full of disdain. He had already been fooled. Did the other party think that he would be fooled again? That was why he didn't even have any defense at the moment. Because he knew that this was an illusion. As long as he wasn't deceived by such an illusion, then these attacks wouldn't harm him at all. On the contrary, once he thought that this was real, then he would be deluded by the illusion. An illusion could also become real. This was the power of the mind. Once, when Anthony was studying at the Rune Academy, his teacher had told him so. He himself was a person with a strong heart, how could he be swayed by the illusion? Therefore, when he saw that everything was an illusion, Anthony was very calm. He actually showed his dislike of Luff, a weak man who only knew how to use illusions. Luff wouldn't dare to have a real fight with him. Come, if you have the ability, why don't you try hurting me? I, Anthony, am the great prince of the Simon Empire and a graduate of the Rune Academy. How can I be fooled by a mere two-star rune master like you? The steel bars, ice blades, fireballs, and the thorns and vines that were rapidly approaching like flood dragons, including the collapsed ruins beside them, were all standing high up in the sky and collapsing towards him. Anthony's eyes were full of disdain, and he could not help but sneer in his heart. The opponent's illusion was indeed very powerful, but an illusion was an illusion. It would not cause any real damage. It was just a waste of his spiritual power. Then, there was a rumble. Countless ice blades, steel bars, and fireballs struck Anthony's body. All kinds of plants wrapped him up, and countless cement stones from the ruins smashed toward his head. Boom, boom, boom. The air around Anthony erupted as if a few bombs had exploded in succession. Flames filled the sky, illuminating the ground into a world of flames. Ah! Anthony threw his head back and roared. This attack was actually real, and not fake. Anthony was completely dumbfounded. He was not prepared for this attack, and all the attacks landed on his body. He spat out a mouthful of blood. After fighting for so long, this was the first time that love had broken through Anthony's defense. He was smashed to the ground, sinking deep into the soil. His body was filled with steel bars, ice blades, and all kinds of wounds. His skin was burned into charcoal by fireballs. His originally gorgeous clothes were now charred black. Blood kept flowing out of the wounds. Anthony gritted his teeth and gathered his last bit of spirit. He used all of his runic abilities to heal and defend. Even so, this enormous attack still caused Anthony to feel incomparably painful. Although they weren't life-threatening, his body suffered a large number of injuries. But his fighting strength was definitely damaged. At this moment, Anthony was no longer the same as when he first appeared. His combat ability had been greatly reduced. His face was filled with shock. Impossible, how could the attacks in this environment really cause me harm? This is absolutely impossible unless this isn't an illusion. Impossible, this is definitely an illusion. There's nothing wrong with my soul, and the person in the illusion hasn't changed either. Why is this happening? Exactly, where is the problem? Anthony roared crazily. He had already hypnotized himself in his heart that this place was an illusion. He had told himself that everything was fake. But that attack had landed squarely on his body. He did not understand. Why was this happening? Luff frowned. This Anthony was really strong. He had taken so many attacks but still didn't die. If it was anyone else, they would have died countless times. Since that is the case, then let's continue. Luff didn't say a word and continued to launch all kinds of attacks. This time, Anthony had to go all out and release his holy shield rune again. This was the only thing that could block Luff's attack. Sure enough, Luff's attack was once again blocked by the holy shield. Luff pursed his lips. This holy shield rune was really a turtle shell. How could it not be broken in a fight? The real body sneaked out of the illusion. There was no use wasting time in the illusion. What if Anthony exploded on the verge of death and hurt him? For the sake of prudence, it was better to be safe. It can still be like this. Elizabeth was dumbfounded. What kind of immortal tactic was Luff using? Originally, she thought that Anthony had seen through the essence of the illusion and that the situation would become disadvantageous to Luff. Who knew that Luff's wave of attacks switched between reality and illusion? This had stunned Elizabeth. She really did not know what to say. If this went on, Anthony was probably not dead yet and would be thoroughly played by Luff. It was very likely that he would be lost in reality and illusion. When he could not distinguish between reality and illusion, then the illusion could bring real damage to Anthony because he had already believed from the bottom of his heart that these attacks would become real attacks. Elizabeth knew that Anthony had no chance of completely reversing the situation. From the beginning to the end, it had been like a cat catching a mouse. Everything was under Luff's control. How was he supposed to play? Moreover, Anthony was seriously injured. After helping for more than an hour, an extremely shocking scene appeared. Anthony was clearly using his runic ability against the air, but from time to time, wounds would appear on his body. The holy shield runes that wrapped him had shrunk quite a bit, and even the color had dimmed. He was on the verge of collapse. I can't accept this. Anthony raised his head to the sky and unwillingly let out a long howl unwillingly. My name shook the Simon Empire when I was 8 years old. I passed for the Rune Academy at the age of 17 and passed the student assessment. I also went to the heavenly battlefield and fought with foreign creatures. I've killed countless foreign creatures. In the future, I'll be the emperor of the Simon Empire. How can I stay here? How can I die? I won't die. I can't die. I'm not willing to give up. I still have a chance. I can still. I want to break your illusion. Then I'll leave this area. When the time comes, I'll kill you. I'll crush the bones on your body bit by bit and cut off the flesh on your body piece by piece. The thought was beautiful. But the reality was cruel. Anthony's rune ability was getting weaker and weaker, much weaker than when it had first appeared. Luff ridiculed speechlessly. Why do all villains say a lot of nonsense before they die or before they do anything? Isn't it better to say less nonsense? They even want to kill me and crush my bones. Why don't you stand up? Luff revealed a chilling expression. He didn't give Anthony a chance to catch his breath. Now was a good opportunity. Anthony was in a daze. He couldn't tell if the illusion before him was real or fake. His heart had started to waver, and he began to believe that everything before him was real. When he thought that everything before him was real, then all the attacks of the illusion were real. The illusion had brought real damage to Anthony, and Luff had been quietly watching from a distance. He no longer intended to let his real body enter the illusion. There was no need. Previously, it was because Anthony believed that everything in the illusion was fake. But now, it was not. Anthony was confused. Luff only needed to stay outside as Anthony's defense was about to be broken. Controlling everything from afar outside the illusion was much easier and safer for him than killing Anthony inside. Luff's mood also relaxed a little. He saw Elizabeth, who was a little lost in thought. He chuckled and said, "I'm sorry. Those soldiers were all killed by me. There's still a target here. Do you want to practice? Don't worry, I'll attract his attention. You just need to attack." These words sounded strange, but Elizabeth still understood. 13 was embarrassed. He had killed all of them, leaving her with no one to kill. She thought that she would be unhappy. All right. After Elizabeth figured it out, she laughed happily. Then, a scene that surprised Luff appeared on her body. A blue speed rune, a blue battle rune, a purple escape rune, and various other runes that represented different abilities appeared on her body one by one. One after another. Finally, another 5 or 6 runes appeared and formed an incomparably huge battle rune in front of his body. Holy War, Battle Formation, and more than 10 battle runes appeared. Then, she took out a wooden sword from the rune space, and these battle runes all entered the wooden sword. It immediately emitted a hazy blue light. Elizabeth waved her hand and aimed this sword at Anthony, who was still struggling in the illusion environment. The air seemed to be torn apart by the wooden sword. An ear-piercing sound rang out, piercing through space. Ah! Anthony let out a shrill scream. His arm was cut off by the wooden sword controlled by Elizabeth, and then quickly flew back to Elizabeth's hand. Luff widened his eyes. What a cool trick. At the same time, the way he looked at Elizabeth was a little strange. Was Elizabeth showing off her control? She was using a wooden sword. This was showing off her control. Elizabeth looked at Luff, the corners of her mouth curled up into a smile. Sigh, I haven't played like this for a long time. My technique is a little rusty. I feel that the combination of the war runes just now isn't very perfect. It needs to be modified. What do you think, young master? Luff understood. This woman was just showing off. It's extremely perfect. There are no flaws at all. Everyone is very envious of you. How could Luff not see through this woman's thoughts? Elizabeth looked at Luff. That sorrowful and helpless look of hers couldn't help but laugh. Do you want to learn? If you want to learn, just say the word and I'll teach you. How about that? Hee hee, there's no need. We'll soon arrive at the rune school. When that time comes, I'll be able to systematize more rune knowledge. Also, the most important thing for me now is to kill Anthony. Luff was very depressed and vented his anger on Anthony. He wished he could directly give Anthony a hammer blow. Anthony could not help but shudder. Why did he feel that the feeling of death was getting stronger and stronger? Panic. Anthony was really panicking. The torture of reality and illusion, the consumption of runes, and the severe damage to his mind and body made his consciousness a little blurry. Under the opponent's face-turning attack, Anthony was starting to lose it. At this time, he was completely struggling with the last bit of his survival consciousness. He was about to collapse. Regardless of whether these attacks were real or fake, he had to take them seriously. But every time he did this, the more spiritual energy he used up. Gradually, he felt that he could no longer hold on. His mind was in a daze, and his spiritual energy was about to be used up. Looking from afar, the color of his holy shield runes was getting dimmer and dimmer. Cracks appeared on the holy shield as if it was broken glass. Soon, with a crack, it would completely shatter. And at this moment, as the holy shield runes dimmed, Anthony's wounds grew. Taking advantage of the weakening of Anthony's runic ability and the chaos in his mind and consciousness, Luff suddenly launched a powerful attack. He didn't hold back at all. This time, he used his full strength to kill Anthony. In the illusion space, Anthony's movements became extremely slow. This was the effect of Luff's time rune. The goal was to make Anthony unable to control the rune. This way, it would not be like Luff's attack. Countless steel bars shot out like arrows, piercing through Anthony's body. Countless ice blades cut through Anthony's body. Then a chain of explosions erupted in the air around him. Bang! 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 Flames filled the sky. Finally, Anthony was blown to the ground by the explosion of the oxygen bomb. If not for his strong body, he would have been blown to pieces. However, although Anthony was on the ground, Luff did not immediately go over to investigate. Instead, he remained cautious and observed from afar for a while. After all, Anthony was a genius of the Simon Empire, and he was also a graduate of the Rune Academy. Perhaps he still had some tricks up his sleeve. It was very likely that the fall before his eyes was also designed by Anthony to trick Luff. When Luff let down his guard, he could launch a sneak attack on him. According to Luff's cautious personality, he would only do something once he was completely sure that there was no danger. As expected, Anthony was still alive. He wasn't dead yet. After a long time, he still didn't see Luff coming over. He couldn't wait any longer. He felt that his life was about to pass. If he didn't use the healing rune to heal his wound, he would die. Raising his hand with difficulty, he commanded the healing rune. As expected of a 5-star rune master, he still didn't die. Luff's expression was solemn. He was glad that he hadn't gone over just now. If he had gone over, based on Anthony's strength, he would probably have killed him. Of course, he couldn't watch Anthony recover. With a casual wave of his hand, he once again activated the last remaining time prohibition ability. Then, he commanded countless steel bars, ice blades, and fireballs to smash onto Anthony's body. When Anthony let out a mournful cry, it resounded throughout the world. I am not reconciled. I want to kill. In the end, he did not finish his sentence. Anthony's head went soft. He was finally dead. After seeing that Anthony had no reaction at all, only then did Luff let out a sigh of relief. He commanded the fireballs that filled the sky to smash onto Anthony's body. Then, he condensed a large mass of pure oxygen and threw it over. The fire became even more vigorous. Anthony's entire body exploded with a bang and burst into powder. Even the remaining soil of his body was blasted into a large pit that was more than 10 meters wide. This time, Anthony was completely dead. Not even a bone was left. For an expert like Anthony, only when Luff personally saw that his body was gone would he be at ease. Who knew that the rune world was such a magical world? What if Anthony possessed some special runes? As long as he was still alive, he would be able to regain his fighting strength and life. Therefore, it was not at all strange that Luff would attack Anthony's corpse so crazily. This was all for the sake of his life. In short, there was nothing wrong with being cautious. He only had one life. He did not want to lose it. He had not had the time to enjoy it properly, nor had he explored the runic world. If he had lost his life in Anthony's hands because of his carelessness, Luff felt extremely fortunate. Fortunately, he hadn't been careful enough to get close to Anthony. At the same time, he felt the blood in his body boiling. One word, awesome. Ever since he transmigrated, this had been Luff's most satisfying battle. Anthony was so powerful. In the beginning, his attacks couldn't even break through the defense of his Holy Shield rune. He had not expected this Holy Shield rune to be so powerful. And that the Destruction rune would actually break free of the time restriction and destroy the opponent's rune ability. If it were not for the restriction of the illusion, which had consumed Anthony's spirit and will, he would have fallen into Anthony's hands this time. However, although Anthony was strong, he had still managed to kill him. Luff felt indescribable joy in his heart. After killing Anthony, the first prince of the Simon Empire, the hostility that the Simon Empire had accumulated for a long time was completely eliminated. The fog above his head, which represented his luck value, also changed from black to light purple. He was very lucky. Luck was not a constant thing. It could change at any time and could only represent a trend in the short term. Anthony's luck was very strong. He was only slightly weaker than Kamiya and the others. Unfortunately, he had still died at the hands of Luff. His luck also transferred to Luff. Therefore, Luff's luck directly turned light purple. Oh right, I haven't read Anthony's memory yet. Luff suddenly remembered that he hadn't searched Anthony's memory. Anthony had graduated from the Rune Academy and was the first prince. His memory must have a lot of high-level knowledge about runes. This was what he lacked the most. Damn, where are Anthony's soul and memory? At this moment, the world was silent. There was only the rustling sound of the wind blowing past. There were only specks of soul light floating in the air. These soul light specks could not extract the memories at all. Luff was speechless. Because he had been too focused, he had directly blown Anthony's body and soul into powder. Not only his body, but even his soul had also completely disappeared. Sigh, if I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have hit so hard. What a pity, Luff sighed. If he could absorb Anthony's memories, he didn't know how much he could save in the future. Young master, why do you look so disappointed? Elizabeth walked over and said with a smile, you killed a 5-star intermediate rune master, and Anthony was an outstanding graduate of the Rune Academy. Anthony was one of the top 20 students in the academy. If this kind of battle record were to be released, it would be enough to shock the 9 great empires. Sigh, you don't understand. Luff waved his hand, not in the slightest bit pleased with himself. He was like a person who had just picked up a lottery ticket that could be exchanged for $1 billion, only to be informed that it had already missed the date of the redemption and could not be exchanged. He had missed $1 billion. Who would be in a good mood? For Luff, Anthony's memories were really equivalent to $1 billion. What was the point of just killing Anthony? Other than increasing his luck, there was nothing else. Thinking of Elizabeth's gorgeous runic techniques and asking him if he wanted to learn, Luff turned around and casually said, actually, killing Anthony has also helped me a lot. We can exchange some runic insights. Hearing Luff's words, Elizabeth laughed, her large eyes squinting into 2 crescent moons. It was obvious that she was the one who wanted to learn how to use runes, yet she still stubbornly refused to admit it. Alright, it's just an exchange. Ha ha ha. Elizabeth laughed and made a face at Luff. She felt extremely comfortable in her heart. She felt that she had regained a lot of balance. She had lost to Luff twice in a row, and she had felt very uneasy. She had also witnessed his extremely rough use of runes, and she simply had no strength to ridicule him. However, it was this simple and rough operation that had allowed Luff to defeat Anthony. Elizabeth could not wait to regain face. When Luff had let her vent her anger, she only had one thought in her mind. She had to let this guy see what a gorgeous and funny use of runes was like. That was how she had been able to use it to show off. Under normal circumstances, Elizabeth would not have done that. In the face of an enemy, the most important thing was to use the simplest method and the least amount of strength to kill the enemy. But in order to show off her rune application method in front of Luff, she had done it. When she saw Luff's helpless and expectant look, Elizabeth's heart immediately felt balanced. This knowledge could actually be learned in the rune school. According to Luff's strength, he would definitely be able to enter the rune school. This was no problem, but sooner or later he would be able to learn this knowledge. Why didn't she teach him now? Firstly, it could satisfy her inner balance and she could find satisfaction from Luff, and secondly, it could make him appreciate her. Why not? Although I can't beat you. But I also have something you don't know. It is not easy to teach a genius who is more powerful than you. Once you get into rune school, it will not be so easy to get satisfaction by teaching him this knowledge. Elizabeth, who was very happy, ignored a very important question. She made a face at Luff. If Brittany saw this, she would be very surprised. Because Brittany had always been very resistant and disgusted with men. She had always been cold and arrogant towards them. It was even an even more exaggerated dislike than the previous Kamiya. Kamiya did not really dislike the opposite sex, but in order to keep herself calm at all times, she would pretend to be cold and aloof. Elizabeth, on the other hand, simply rejected the opposite sex because of her status and nature. This was a form of pride. Someone from the opposite sex would not make her want to look at them. Therefore, she couldn't make a face at a man. But just now, he had made a face at Luff. Obviously, Luff was the only man that she rejected. The reason was simple. She had been the #1 goddess of the Dawn Empire since birth and she was extremely arrogant. Suddenly meeting a man who had caused her to fail twice in a row broke the peace of the past few years. This was especially so with Luff's appearance and temperament, which Elizabeth had never seen before. At first, she did not pay attention to it. After all, she had never cared about the looks of the opposite sex. No matter how good-looking he was not as good-looking as her, nor was he as good-looking as Sister Camia. But Luff was really good-looking. His entire body was filled with the masculine beauty of a man, and his facial features were as good-looking as if they were carved by God himself. Especially when Luff defeated Anthony, his expression was calm. It made Elizabeth feel as if she had seen a god. Elizabeth rarely had contact with the opposite sex. She did not understand what this meant and what effect it would have on her. In short, at least Elizabeth felt very good now. Luff did not think too much about it. He just felt that Elizabeth's appearance was a little sudden, and she actually had made a face at him. She was quite good looking. However, this girl had a cold expression on her face before. Luff had seen it many times, and he had gotten used to it. No matter which world a woman was from, as long as she had some qualifications, she would be very arrogant, let alone an outstanding woman like Elizabeth or Camia. Not to mention intelligence, talent, and strength. Just beauty alone was enough to instantly kill all the women that Luff had seen before. Even a top-notch female celebrity could not compare to Elizabeth or Camia. It could be said that she was a perfect beauty. In the distance, Rexton and the others looked on in shock as they watched the battle end. Everyone was dumbstruck and could not say a word. Their mouths were agape. They even had doubts about life. This was the first time they realized that 13 was this strong. They had thought that he was very strong, but they hadn't expected him to be this strong. This strength was a bit too much. That wasn't an ordinary person, nor was it the Lion Horse Guards. It was Anthony. The Prince of the Simon Empire, the former #1 genius, and an outstanding graduate of the Rune Academy. To Rexton and the others, he was simply a godlike existence. They were not even people from the same era as Anthony. Anthony was a legend of the Simon Empire from at least 10 years ago. He had always been an inspiration to the young generation of the Simon Empire. Countless people had regarded him as their goal in life. In the Simon Empire, Anthony was a myth in the eyes of the younger generation. However, this myth was ended by Yi Shisen. The two were not from the same era at all. Anthony had graduated from the academy almost 10 years ago, and he was now the master of a city. Even on the heavenly battlefield, he was a powerful existence that ruled a region. As for 13, he was about the same age as them, around 16 or 17. 16 or 17-year-old Anthony had still been taking the Rune School entrance exam. And 13 hadn't even started thinking about the academy entrance exam. One was a genius that hadn't been born yet, and the other was a powerhouse that had been famous for a long time. But it was this long-famous Anthony who was actually killed by 13, this young man. Moreover, looking at the battle process, Anthony hadn't even touched 13's clothes. This kind of shock. It was simply difficult to describe with words. There was also Elizabeth showing off her skills to Luff, making them feel that they were going to the Shijiao Empire purely to make up the numbers. Not to mention compared to 13, even if it was compared to Elizabeth and Camia. No, it was also completely incomparable. They could be considered quite talented in the Simon Empire, and they were also nobles. But compared to the 9 great empires, they were really very ordinary, and could even be considered as being at the bottom. The entire battle lasted less than an hour, and they felt as if their souls had undergone a baptism. Those mysterious and complicated runes almost made their eyes go blurry. Sure enough, Luff had told them before that they only needed to protect Claire well. If they helped, it would only cause trouble for Luff if they went over to help. If nothing unexpected happened, they would die on the spot. The thing they were most afraid of was that Luff would be distracted by them, or even lose the battle in order to save them. At that time, they would really be sinners. Is it over? Rexton asked softly. The scene of Luff bombarding Anthony with fireballs and air bombs was still etched in his mind. Anthony. The prince of the Simon Empire, the city lord of a city, his idol when he was young. He had gone just like that. Furthermore, he didn't even see his face when he left. He was directly blown to death by Luff. There wasn't even a complete corpse left. He was directly blown into powder. It should be over. Lorca swallowed his saliva and replied. The two of them looked at each other and understood the meaning in each other's eyes. They would never become enemies with Luff in their lifetime. Otherwise, they would definitely die a terrible death. When they thought of the scene of Anthony's death, their hair stood on end and they had goosebumps. 13 was 2FC King terrifying. Let go of me. I'm going to find the young master. Claire struggled with all her might. She had wanted to follow Luff from the start, but Vivian had stopped her. She could only struggle, but she couldn't break free until the battle was over. The battle was over. Only then did Vivian let go of her. Young master, young master. Claire called out urgently and ran desperately towards Luff. She didn't care about the danger, because if the young master was gone, she would lose the meaning of life. She was bought by the young master with 1,000 gold coins. What she wanted to do in her life was to learn all the skills and take good care of him. If the young master died, would she still have the meaning of life? This girl. Seeing this, Kamiya shook her head with a smile. She could feel Claire's concern for Luff. Claire was much stronger than her maid. Ever since Kamiya had been drugged by her maid and had a beautiful misunderstanding with Luff, she no longer trusted her maids. Thus, she hadn't brought any maids with her on this trip to the Shijiao Empire. Vivian looked at Kamiya without saying a word. From the words that young Master 13 had said to Kamiya when he left to fight Anthony, the words that Kamiya had cared about at that time, and the look of worry and fear on Kamiya's face when young Master 13 was fighting, the relationship between Kamiya and Luff was definitely not ordinary. This was a woman's sixth sense, and it was usually very accurate. Kamiya was currently the #1 genius of the Simon Empire. Many people knew about her temperament. If they were just ordinary friends, she would not have such a reaction. Sigh. Vivian sighed sorrowfully in her heart. She knew that she had no chance at all. Her appearance was not bad, and she was quite good looking. Her talent was also not bad. But she couldn't be compared to Kamiya at all. Kamiya was the #1 genius of the Simon Empire, and she was also the #1 beauty of the Simon Empire. She couldn't be compared to her at all. She was a bright star in the sky, but Kamiya was at the brightest moon beside her. Raising their head to look at the sky, one would only see the bright moon at the first moment, and not the dim stars. That was why Vivian was very worried. She really didn't have the chance to be with young Master 13. He had probably never noticed her, or even knew her feelings for him. That's right. With a lover like Kamiya, why would he take a fancy to her? Vivian shook her head sadly, then looked at Rexton and Lorca walking towards Luff. She was about to get up, but she saw that Kamiya had not moved at all. She could not help but ask, Miss Kamiya, aren't you going to see young Master 13? No. Kamiya smiled and shook her head. Anthony was dead. That B** starred was alive. Knowing this result was enough. Even if they went to see that B** starred, there was nothing she and Luff could say in front of so many people. What's there to see? It's just a small scene. Brittany was very calm. With the young Master 13 and her lady, wasn't it normal to win? Was there a need to be so surprised? As Elizabeth's maid, Brittany had followed Elizabeth everywhere. What kind of world had she not seen? She had experienced even more dangerous situations. Although she did not have any talent in the field of rune cultivation and was just a lowly maid, she knew that her own young miss was so powerful and had been defeated by young Master 13. Then, young Master 13 must be very powerful. Wouldn't it be normal for young Master 13 and her miss to defeat Anthony? Of course, this logic wasn't wrong. It came from Brittany's confidence in Elizabeth and Luff. But in fact, she had also underestimated Anthony. If it was a one-on-one, Elizabeth against Anthony, it was hard to say who would have won. Elizabeth was a 3-star rune master, while Anthony was a 5-star rune master. However, Elizabeth was superior to Anthony in terms of rune quality. Anthony only had damage and holy shield, 2 high-level rune master runes. However, Elizabeth had several high-level runes in addition to speed runes. With these high-level runes, Elizabeth might be able to fight Anthony to a draw. However, it would still be very difficult to kill Anthony. After all, Anthony was a veteran rune master. Brittany was purely confident. On the other side, Elizabeth had already started teaching. 13. How should I describe your foundation? It's about the same level as when I was 5 years old. Your master has simply been too irresponsible. Other than the condensation of runes, he hasn't taught you anything. After understanding Luff's foundation, Elizabeth was completely shocked. With such a tiny foundation, he actually still had that kind of fighting strength. It was simply unimaginable. Cough cough. Luff coughed dryly twice. Even someone as thick-skinned as him could not help but blush a little when he heard Elizabeth's words. Elizabeth had already said it very politely, saying that his foundation was equivalent to when she was 5 years old. In reality, he had no foundation at all. From the time he condensed runes to the time he used runes, he had fumbled through everything on his own. Including the system that directly transformed English into runes, he had had no difficulty at all in condensing runes. He could transform whatever English he wanted into the corresponding runes. Therefore, Luff did not have to worry and had leapt over the first hurdle in learning runes. However, he was completely unable to learn anything else about runes. He had never received any systematic learning. The previous owner of this body was a down-and-out noble, so he had no right to go to the academy to learn. Therefore, Luff's runes actually had zero foundation. My teacher said that this was a kind of free-range training and development. He said that the knowledge that was instilled had lacked spirituality, so the knowledge that he found and comprehended would be more profound, and it would also be more creative. I didn't understand these things when I was young. At that time, I only felt that what my teacher said was very reasonable. I only understand it now as I've grown up. Luff deliberately kept them in suspense. Understood what? Elizabeth and the others surrounded him. It was obvious that they were very interested in Luff's words. In fact, they somewhat agreed with what Luff had casually made up. Moreover, they felt a sense of novelty. This was the first time they had heard of a free-range education method. It seemed that Luff's teacher wasn't irresponsible. Instead, he had a unique training method. Luff chuckled and said, I finally understand. My teacher was lazy. Everyone was stunned at first. Then, they burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. Your teacher was too funny. Elizabeth laughed so hard that she could not close her mouth. She had thought that Luff was going to say something important. For example, his master was actually trying to let him learn more advanced rune knowledge. She had not expected that it was actually because he was lazy. It's not necessarily because he was lazy. In fact, what your master said makes a bit of sense. However, the level is too high and it is difficult for ordinary people to understand. Luff, I have to make a learning plan for you based on this foundation of yours. There's still about a week or so before you arrive at the Shijiao Empire. How much you can learn will depend on yourself. Elizabeth lifted her delicate little head and spoke to Luff earnestly like a little teacher. First, let's talk about the problem of raising the grade of runes that you're most concerned about. Actually, the most direct method is to take out some treasures and display your own runes. Then, we can see if the runes have any reaction to this treasure. If there is a reaction, it proves that this treasure has an effect on the runes. Then, we can absorb it. This way, we can raise the grade of the runes to a certain extent. On the other hand, if there is no reaction, it proves that this treasure has no effect on the runes. The stronger the reaction, the more appropriate it is. This process is similar to the phenomenon of the tone of the communication rune. If you encounter a treasure with the strongest reaction, don't hesitate and directly absorb it to increase the grade. Of course, there is a prerequisite here. The rune cannot exceed the blue grade. Because once the rune reaches the blue grade, it cannot use the corresponding treasure to increase the grade. After all, the highest grade is the purple rune. Purple runes can only be encountered but not sought. In the past thousands of years, there have only been a few hundred purple runes. Moreover, as the level of the runes increases, the effects of the treasure will continue to weaken. After saying that, Elizabeth looked at Luff and said, in that case, you should be able to understand. Of course I can understand. Luff smiled. Elizabeth's explanation was very detailed. If he still could not understand it, he could just find a tree and bash his head into it. However, regarding the issue of raising the grade of this rune, he had a rough understanding of it in his heart. Previously, when Elizabeth gave him a review of the treasures that he had looted from Berg's treasury, she had mentioned that some treasures could raise the grade of the rune. Now she was just confirming it. However, Luff did not expect that there would be such a magical method. Although he did not need these treasures to raise the runic grade, Claire could use them. In the future, when she started to learn runes, if the runic grade that she condensed was too low, Luff would give these treasures to Claire and let her raise his runic grade. As her maid, her strength could not be too weak, or else she would lose face if word got out. Just think about it, if even his maid could shake the world and make everyone in the rune world revere her, then how would the world revere Luff as her master? He would be practically like a god. Luff was a little excited at the thought of it. He smiled and said, "Why isn't this method recorded in the library of the Dawn Hotel?" The library of the Dawn Hotel. Elizabeth was stunned for a moment before she laughed. That's a place for entertainment. Who would go to the library of a hotel to read books? Moreover, the books in the Dawn Hotel were all popular books, basic knowledge of runes, biographies of people, and some geographical introductions. Quote. Young master, young master. While the two of them were chatting, Claire ran over. Seeing her concerned look, Luff smiled and patted her head. After a while, Rexton and the others came. Looking at Luff, it was as if they were looking at a demon. Looking at them, Luff couldn't help but laugh. What's wrong? Am I that scary? No. Rexton and the others shook their heads. I didn't expect you to be so strong. It's beyond our imagination. They were still shocked when they recalled the scene of Luff killing Anthony. Luff chuckled. Just average. No matter how strong we are still friends. Yes, we are friends. Rexton and the others smiled when they heard Luff's words. It was not important whether Luff was strong or not. What was important was that he treated them as true friends. Originally, Luff could have stayed out of this matter and left alone. However, he had stayed behind for them. Not only that, he had even taken the initiative to attack the soldiers sent by the Queen to kill them. They did not doubt Luff's words at all. If this was not considered a friend, then what would be considered a friend? They completely approved of Luff. Now this was sorted, they once again packed up and headed towards the Shijiao Empire. The Rune Academy's examination was about to begin. If they missed it, they would have to wait until next year before they could participate in the examination. Fortunately, they weren't far from the Shijiao Empire now. After spending 4 to 5 days traveling, they finally arrived at the Shijiao Empire's capital, Heavenly Star City. The moment they entered Star City, Luff felt was that it was huge. Star City was unusually big. The roads were extremely wide and could accommodate 8 horses galloping at the same time. The buildings on both sides were tall and exquisite. It was not something that the Simon Empire could compare to. Moreover, the standard of living of the Shijiao Empire's citizens was obviously much higher than the Simon Empire's. Along the way, the people that Luff and the rest saw were all smiling, confident, and full of energy. Unlike the capital of the Simon Empire, there weren't even a few people on the road. The commoners that they saw in the Simon Empire were all dressed in shabby clothes, and their faces were sallow and emaciated. There were many people coming and going on the streets. There were many carriages, just like them, that drove into the city from outside the city gates. Some of the young boys and girls in the carriages excitedly pulled open the curtains and sized up the novel surroundings. It was very obvious that these people were the same as Luff and the others. They were all students who had come to the Shijiao Empire to participate in the Rune Academy's assessment. Wow, young master, is this the Shijiao Empire? It's so beautiful. Claire's eyes widened in excitement as she looked at the surrounding buildings and the endless stream of people. There were many small stalls on the streets. The hawkers were all attracting customers. Luff smiled and patted Claire's little head. The Shijiao Empire was indeed different. It made Luff feel like it was a powerful empire in the middle world, but that was all. However, it had to be said that the architecture of the Shijiao Empire was indeed very beautiful. It had a very artistic feel, which made Luff very curious. The level of the architecture even exceeded the medieval level of his world. However, after thinking about it, it was understandable. After all, this world could use the ability of runes. If he could control the soil and rocks, as long as his imagination was in place, what kind of architecture could not be made? Therefore, after being curious, Luff did not have the slightest fluctuation. After all, he had come from a big city in the world of technology. He was used to seeing all kinds of skyscrapers, let alone these buildings that were made of bricks and stones. 13. Let's find a hotel to settle down first. After settling down, we will go to the Rune Academy. Rexton got down from the carriage and walked in front of Luff. The examination for the Rune Academy would not begin until the next day. Moreover, students who were not in an official school could not stay there. Therefore, the students who came to participate in the examination had to stay in the hotel. Once they passed the examination, they would be able to successfully enter the Rune Academy and move into the school. If they failed, they would have to return to where they came from and it would not affect anything. Okay. Luff nodded his head in agreement. I know a place that is not bad. I will take you there. Elizabeth's carriage was right beside him. When she heard that they were going to find a place to settle down, she said softly, "Oh, the place that you think is good is definitely not ordinary. Let's go and take a look." After a while, they were led by Elizabeth to a rather grand hotel called the Galaxy Hotel. This hotel was much grander than the Dawn Inn.